On the morning of Friday, October 13th, 1307, sealed letters are opened simultaneously across every corner of France. The letters have been in the hands of royal officials for weeks, with strict orders not to open them until this specific morning. They contain a single instruction: arrest every Knight Templar in France. Today, all of them, at the same time. By nightfall, hundreds of the most elite warriors in Christendom are in French royal prisons. The most powerful military and financial order in medieval Europe has been destroyed in a single morning. Not by a rival army, not by a Muslim force, not by any military defeat, but by a king who owed them money and found a way to avoid paying it back. The date is Friday the 13th. And the superstition that has haunted that date ever since may begin here, in the cells where the Templars spent their first night as prisoners. By the end of this video, you will understand how the most powerful military order in medieval Europe was destroyed, not in battle, but in a single coordinated arrest on a Friday morning. You will learn how the Knights Templar became the first international banking system in history, and why that made them more dangerous to kings than any army. You will learn why the King of France needed the Pope's cooperation to destroy the Templars, and how he got it, and what it cost the Pope who refused. And you will learn what happened to the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar on a small island in the Seine River in Paris, and the curse he reportedly pronounced as he burned, and whether anything he said came true. This is 1307, the year the most powerful knights in history were destroyed by paperwork and debt. The Knights Templar are founded in 1119 in the aftermath of the First Crusade, with an original mission of protecting Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. 9 knights, initially so poor they share horses, housed in a wing of the royal palace built on the site of Solomon's temple, from which they take their name. Within 2 centuries, the order has become something almost unimaginable from those origins. At their peak, the Knights Templar control approximately 9,000 properties across Europe and the Middle East. They operate the most sophisticated financial network in the medieval world, effectively inventing the letter of credit, allowing pilgrims and merchants to deposit money in one country and withdraw it in another without carrying vulnerable coin across dangerous roads. They are also warriors of extraordinary skill and ferocity, bound by a monastic rule that combines the disciplines of monks with the training of professional soldiers. They do not retreat unless outnumbered more than 3 to 1. They are among the last forces to leave Acre in 1291, when the final Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land falls. By 1307, the Crusades are effectively over. The Templars' original military purpose has disappeared, but their wealth, their network, and their independence from any single king's authority remain. And that combination has become a problem for a French king named Philip IV, known to history as Philip the Fair. Philip IV of France is one of the most capable and ruthless political operators of the medieval world. He has spent his reign systematically expanding royal power at the expense of every institution that limits it: the nobility, the church, and the Italian banking families that have financed French royal expenditure for generations. By the early 14th century, Philip owes enormous sums of money. Wars against England and Flanders have been expensive. The royal treasury is depleted. And among Philip's largest creditors are the Knights Templar, who have been banking for the French crown for decades. Philip cannot simply default on this debt. The Templars are too powerful, too connected, and too independent. They answer to the Pope, not to the King of France. Philip cannot touch them through normal legal means. He needs something else. He needs a charge so serious that it bypasses the order's special relationship with Rome entirely. He chooses heresy. The charges Philip brings against the Knights Templar are extraordinary in their scope and their specific content, and almost certainly fabricated in their most dramatic details. The accusations include that Templars denied Christ, during their secret initiation ceremonies, spitting on the cross, that they worshipped an idol called Baphomet, that they engaged in obscene acts during their initiation rituals, that they gave absolution to each other without priestly authority, that their leaders were corrupt and their order had become a den of heresy and sodomy. Modern historians regard most of these charges as products of torture and political pressure. The Templars operated in secret. Their initiation ceremonies were genuinely private, and that secrecy made it easy to fill the mystery with whatever accusations were needed. The Pope, Clement V, is at this moment entirely dependent on Philip's support. His papacy is weak, his position in Rome untenable. He has moved the papal seat to Avignon in France, essentially becoming a prisoner of French royal politics. When Philip presents him with the charges against the Templars, Clement initially resists. Then, faced with the reality of what Philip has already set in motion, he cooperates. The logistical achievement of the arrests on October 13th, 1307 is, regardless of its moral character, genuinely extraordinary. Coordinating the simultaneous arrest of hundreds of people scattered across an entire country in an era with no telegraph or telephone, using only sealed letters carried by royal messengers on horseback, is an administrative feat that demonstrates the sophistication of Philip's royal bureaucracy. The Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, is in Paris at the time of the arrests. He is actually attending a royal funeral. Philip has invited him specifically to ensure he is present and can be taken without resistance. De Molay and the Templar leadership are arrested first in the pre-dawn hours of October 13th. Then the signal goes out. Across France, in every preceptory and commandery of the order, royal agents move simultaneously. By the end of the day, the arrests are largely complete. The Templars, who have spent 2 centuries fighting on some of the most dangerous battlefields in the medieval world, are taken without significant resistance. They do not resist a royal arrest order, even an unjust one. Their discipline, paradoxically, makes them easier to destroy. What follows the arrests is an interrogation process conducted under torture that produces exactly the confessions Philip needs. The Inquisition, operating under papal authority, questions the arrested Templars. Under torture, many confess to some or all of the charges: denying Christ, spitting on the cross, obscene initiation rites. These confessions are then used to justify the charges, creating a circular logic. The confessions prove the guilt. The guilt justifies the torture that produced the confessions. Jacques de Molay himself initially confesses. Under what conditions, the sources do not fully specify. He later recants his confession, which under the laws of heresy makes his situation significantly worse. A heretic who confesses and then recants is a relapsed heretic, which carries the most severe punishment the medieval church can impose. Many Templars, faced with the choice between a false confession that might save their lives or a recantation that would condemn them, choose to maintain their confessions. 54 Templars who recant their confessions are burned as relapsed heretics in 1310. The sight of this mass burning causes many other imprisoned Templars to rapidly reconfirm their confessions. In 1312, at the Council of Vienne, Pope Clement V formally dissolves the Knights Templar as an order. Not because they are found guilty, the council cannot reach a definitive verdict on the charges, but because their continued existence has become impossible given the circumstances. The order's vast properties are transferred, in theory, to the Knights Hospitaller, the other major crusading military order, and the one that had been the Templars' great rival for 2 centuries. In practice, Philip IV keeps much of the French Templar property for himself. In March 1314, Jacques de Molay, who has been imprisoned for nearly 7 years, is brought to a scaffold on a small island in the Seine River in Paris, the Ile de la Cité, to hear his final sentence read aloud. He is condemned to life imprisonment. De Molay rejects the sentence. he publicly recants his confession, declares the Templars innocent, and says that the only crime was that they had falsely confessed under torture. He is immediately condemned to burn as a relapsed heretic. The fire is lit the same evening. As Jacques de Molay burned, according to accounts written in the decades following his death, he called out from the flames to his accusers. He summoned Pope Clement V to meet him before God within 40 days. He summoned King Philip IV to meet him within a year. Pope Clement V died 33 days later, on April 20th, 1314. The cause was a sudden illness, possibly related to a chronic condition he had suffered for years. King Philip IV died on November 29th, 1314, 8 months after de Molay's execution. He was 46 years old. The cause was a hunting accident, a stroke or injury sustained while hunting. The three sons Philip left as heirs, Louis X, Philip V, and Charles IV, each died without a male heir, ending the direct Capuchin dynasty within 14 years of their father's death. The succession crisis that followed eventually produced the 100 Years' War. Whether de Molay actually spoke these words, whether Clement and Philip's deaths were more than coincidence, and whether the end of Philip's dynasty was connected to anything de Molay said as he burned, these are questions that have fascinated and divided historians and storytellers for 7 centuries. The connection between October 13th, 1307, and the modern superstition around Friday the 13th is a matter of genuine historical debate. Friday had long had negative associations in Christian tradition. It is the day of the crucifixion. The number 13 had various negative associations in different cultural traditions. The combination of Friday and the 13th as specifically unlucky may predate 1307. But the arrests of the Templars on that specific date gave the combination of Friday and 13 a specific, historically documented, catastrophic event to attach itself to: the destruction of the most powerful order of Christian warriors by a corrupt alliance of royal greed and papal weakness. Whether the Templar arrests caused the superstition, contributed to it, or simply happened to occur on a date that was already unlucky in some traditions, the date October 13th, 1307 is the most dramatic real-world Friday the 13th in recorded history. And the story it tells, of an institution destroyed not by military force, but by accusations, debt, and political manipulation, is in some ways more disturbing than any supernatural explanation for why a day of the week and a number might be unlucky. What makes 1307 remarkable is not simply the destruction of a powerful institution, it is the method of that destruction. The Knights Templar were, by any military measure, among the most formidable warriors of the medieval world. They had fought on the most dangerous battlefields in Christendom for 2 centuries. They had rules against retreating unless outnumbered 3-1. They had survived sieges, defeats, and the collapse of the entire crusading enterprise that had given them their purpose. None of that mattered on the morning of October 13th, 1307. What destroyed them was not a sword or a siege engine. It was a sealed letter, a debt, a corrupt charge, and a pope who needed a king's support more than he needed to protect the innocent. The Templars were destroyed by the tools of the institution they had spent 2 centuries serving: the Church, the monarchy, the legal system of medieval Christendom. The weapons used against them were accusations, courts, and confessions extracted by torture. This is the real lesson of 1307. Power built on military supremacy is vulnerable to a kind of attack it cannot fight back against. The Templars had no defense against paperwork. They had no defense against a charge of heresy, prosecuted by the institution that defined heresy. They had no defense against a king who had decided that destroying them was preferable to paying what he owed. Jacques de Molay burned on that island in the Seine on a March evening in 1314. The order he led was already gone, and whether his curse was real or legend, the men he named were dead within a year. 1307. The year the most powerful military order in medieval history was destroyed in a single morning by sealed letters, fabricated charges, and a king's unpaid debt on a Friday, the 13th. If this story made you think, leave a comment. Do you think the curse of Jacques de Molay was real? Or were the deaths of Clement and Philip simply coincidence that a good story turned into prophecy? Subscribe to the Vault of Numbers. Every week, one number, one story history forgot to tell you. The next number in the vault? A king took 300 men to a narrow mountain pass. He knew they would not come back. He went anyway. The vault remains open